At this point, if you haven't heard about Chainsaw Man, then you must either be a new fan to the anime medium, or B, a veteran who has made their return. Chainsaw Man is an ongoing manga series turned anime adaptation that took the internet by storm. Its moments of hilarity and twists offered a breath of fresh air compared to other household shonen names, one popular competing example being Demon Slayer. Chainsaw Man deserves its high praise for what it shows and currently is still showing the online community with its storytelling and riveting character dramas. The author, Tatsuki Fujimoto, is an interesting man to say the very least. From role-playing as his little sister on Twitter to attempting to levitate off the ground, audiences gravitate to this quirky personality and what his peculiar mind is capable of creating. Aside from Chainsaw Man, which was released in 2018, Fujimoto had an earlier work titled Fire Punch released in 2016. Having read both of these works, I felt like I had a strong grasp on Fujimoto's style of storytelling and style of drawing. I have an overwhelmingly positive opinion on Chainsaw Man, but an overwhelmingly negative opinion on Fire Punch. With that in mind, I will try to not let my opinions of these two bleed into my discussion of today's topic, Look Back. In 2021, Look Back, a one-shot, was released. Look Back was my first one-shot manga, and at first I didn't really have any idea of what to expect. I understood that there are pitfalls associated with having such a short story. How can someone create a story that concludes so quickly with characters who may not have had enough time and development devoted to their growth? Most short stories face these issues, and initially I was skeptical of what I was about to read. After reading Look Back, I had viewed threads and discussion boards on whether it had succeeded in making others care about the characters despite its short nature, and overwhelmingly it did. A criticism I've read is that it is bad because it is too short with not enough time. I've seen this criticism in various forms of media and content. I do not think that the lack of content would make Look Back bad. In fact, I think it speaks to how well Fujimoto can write an engaging story and leave us with a melancholic finish in such a short amount of time. Look Back is the pick-me-up that writers need to move on from their writer's block. It is an engaging story that covers a grounded friendship of camaraderie and talent. A story that is simple, down to earth, and tragic that makes for good brain food to think on for later. I think one of my favorite ongoing discussions was how the characters were just placeholders for specific events in life or were representatives of concepts and life experiences. I found it surprising how internet discourse showed dozens and dozens of different interpretations from the story. I think that having such a vibrant community discussing your work is one of the highest praises one can receive as a content creator. This discussion of Look Back will be my attempt at understanding the different themes and events from my perspective, and trying to find a pattern between this and Fujimoto's other works. So, without further ado, let's take a look at Look Back. The story begins in 4th grade, where our main character Fujino is the artist of the 4th grade newspaper. Her role is to draw comic strips, more accurately, 4-panel manga. I think the Japanese official word is yonkoma, but for the remainder of this video, I'm just going to keep calling it a manga strip because I don't want to pronounce it wrong several times, and also I don't want to insult a whole group of people. Immediately, my attention was caught by the 4-panel manga strip because of its curt formatting. A story, in this case the joke, has to be explained in a short amount of time, almost mirroring the one-shot manga format. Fujino is a master, quote-unquote, at making these manga strips for her newspaper, where she boasts she can make them in about 5 minutes. Her fellow classmates adore her work and compliment her, which unfortunately only serves to inflate her ego. I don't mean to say it negatively, but it's just a matter of fact. Fujino is in 4th grade. She probably feels like she's on top of the world right now and that there's no other worthy opponent. The manga strip is drenched in Fujimoto's type of humor that a fan of his can recognize. For example, one point in Chainsaw Man had two characters kick the villain in the balls over and over again as a form of retribution. His style of humor always roots back to making his reader laugh at the sheer absurdity of a situation. The manga strip shows a couple promising to meet in the next life and kiss. After they die and are reincarnated, the woman waits for the man, where the man has been reincarnated as a meteor ready to kiss the earth through its impact. Presumably they both die. The phrase "in the next life" comes to mind when reading Fujino's manga strip because the two hope to be reborn in the next life and meet each other. This concept takes on a whole new meaning when a reader does finish Look Back, and how, in a different life, events could have possibly played out differently. But that is a topic that we can talk about for later. Fujino sees herself as the lone hotshot artist who revels in her praise because of the lack of competition. Even so, regardless of her success on the newspaper and with drawing, she would still rather prefer to become an athlete than an actual artist. She is called into her teacher's office where she is informed that she will now have to share the artist's space in the 4th grade newspaper to Kyomoto, a student who does not attend classes physically at their school. Fujino is unconcerned and haughty that another person is attempting to draw manga and offer some sort of competition, an opinion formed from her ego. The next time that the newspaper is distributed throughout the school, Fujino is baffled by what she sees. 2 points before continuing. The first is the facial expression Fujino makes when she sees Kyomoto's drawing. I fully believe that Fujimoto's work can be recognized solely by the way he expresses his characters in comparison to the bigger brand shonen manga. Fujimoto has perfected this almost lifelike representation of expression that can hold more than one emotion. When a character is nervous, enraged, or annoyed, the accuracy is portrayed to an almost perfect degree. Here, Fujino's expression captures that bewildered surprise that someone was able to compete against her and steal her thunder. The second point is that Kyomoto does not draw a manga strip showcasing a story, but instead just draws different backgrounds, the topic of this first strip being after school. Kyomoto has already been described by Fujino's homeroom teacher as being a truant, someone who does not come to school. So isn't it ironic that Kyomoto's first drawing in the school newspaper is the place where she hasn't been in a while? I believe that the reason she drew the school is because of how much she misses it, which is confirmed true upon Fujino and Kyomoto's first conversation later. But it's in this initial clash that we get a firm understanding of their two different strengths. Fujino's core in her drawings is they are an enjoyable read that focuses on a hook. In simpler terms, she provides the story, the midsection that makes a reader want to finish her manga strip. While Kyomoto focuses on the scenery around her, essentially, she provides the backdrop, the background, for Fujino's story. It might be a bit of a stretch, but in this first side-by-side comparison we get between the two manga strips, Fujino's character Mika is stopped by a teacher in the hallway, and horizontally across, Kyomoto's drawing of the staircase that would lead into the hallway provides a setting for Fujino's story. Fujimoto is already laying the groundwork for the collaboration between the two 4th graders and how they complement each other's work. Of course, instead of being in awe at Kyomoto's drawing like the rest of her class, Fujino feels slighted, mainly due to her classmates comparing apples to oranges between the two drawings. On her way back home from school, Fujino sees a rice transplanter and understands the degree to which Kyomoto is capable of as an artist. Fujino then begins her training arc as she buys different art book guides and devotes a significant amount of time towards improving her art. Now, I don't know exactly why I'm obsessed over this portion of the story, but as Fujino vows to not lose to Kyomoto, she is walking past what I assume to be a rice field. The only reason I say this is because she saw the rice transplanter as she continued to walk, the manga making an emphasis on her eyes, noticing the machine. Why is it that after seeing this machine does Fujino decide to beat Kyomoto? I have several interpretations. I think the first is that Fujino sees Kyomoto as a machine who is constantly honing her craft. I believe this because Fujino states that while she's at school, Kyomoto is drawing, meaning Kyomoto does not stop working while Fujino is still trying to find a balance between friends, family, and drawing. Another interpretation is that Fujino sees herself as a machine who must devote her time to art and drawing. to beat Kyomoto. The phrase, like a well-oiled machine, popped up in my head for me. The last idea I had is that maybe the machine is just completely irrelevant, and instead of what Fujimoto is trying to explain to us metaphorically is that the rice transplanter is putting in fresh seeds of rice to grow. Both Fujino and Kyomoto are in 4th grade, they're children, and that this amicable conflict will allow them to release their potential as artists, to grow together. Fujino's training arc reminds me of the potential we have when we're good at something. Similar to Fujino's 5 minutes per manga strip, I held the belief that I could finish writing essays in under 30 minutes and consider them great. They were not the best, but if you put in your soul and hard work into improving your craft, you're capable of doing so many more grander things in that area. Fujino's improvement unfortunately comes to the point of obsession. The word obsession is definitely negatively charged here, and for good reason. Fujino's improvement comes at the cost of her friends and family. She begins to act as a recluse in her own room, almost mirroring Kyomoto's lifestyle when we first see her. Her grades plummet and starts to be branded as a social weirdo for her continued love of drawing. The obsession to overcome Kyomoto continues on for 2 more years, where the manga explicitly states the passing of time through the monthly calendar. This mini-conflict reaches its climax when 2 years later, in the year before graduating onto middle school, Fujino sees Kyomoto's drawing of a summer festival. She takes a good, hard look and decides to officially accept her defeat after 2 years. For 2 straight years, these two battled over the school newspaper, and after her sister's judgment and overwhelming feeling of disappointment, Fujino decided to call it quits. Finally, their cycle is broken, and the artistic war between these two is put to rest. One small observation I made while reading is that the week Fujino accepted her loss, the joke she had made on the manga strip just really wasn't that funny. In fact, I found more interest in her actual style of drawing due to its improvement than the humor. Maybe it wasn't a joke that was supposed to resonate with me, or perhaps there's a degree of cultural differences, but I saw this point in the manga as Fujino forgetting what made her manga strips so entertaining. Also, an observation of Kyomoto's drawing is that she continued to draw backgrounds that she might not have ever seen herself. See, Kyomoto is a recluse but wishes to go out and see more if it wasn't for her shyness. The backgrounds that Kyomoto draws are the places she wishes she could go to. It captures how much she wants to enjoy the outside world, but because of her introvertedness and fear of people, she is unable to. Fujino sheds off her competitive spirit and enjoys socializing with her friends and bonding with her family again. Even as she returns from a karate class, she sees her old art book and decides to throw it away, void of any attachment. Time speeds up and we reach the point of graduation where Fujino and her classmates will now attend middle school. During the celebration, Fujino is once again pulled aside by her homeroom teacher and is asked to deliver Kyomoto's diploma. Fujino is initially hesitant, but eventually coaxed into going and delivering said diploma. As she arrives at Kyomoto's residence, we receive a stark contrast to what we saw in Fujino's home. It is clear that there's more than one person currently in the home, but even after announcing her arrival, no one shows up to greet her. The house seems desolate, empty, honestly a house of no emotion. It is an interesting background to have considering the already mysterious nature of Kyomoto. After hearing a noise down a hallway, Fujino walks down the hall to see columns of workbooks lining the walls, a testament to the work that Kyomoto has put into improving her art while Fujino has retired. As Fujino contemplates on how best to approach the locked door, she decides to draw a manga strip. She most likely had no intention of showing this manga strip to Kyomoto due to how worried her expression was when the strip fell out of her hand and underneath the door. A confused Kyomoto ends up reading the manga strip and lets out a startled "what?" This causes Fujino to panic after having her morbid humor on full display. Considering the fact that Fujino is in 6th grade, the reason she drew the specific topic of the manga panel was a way to make light of the situation. Keep in mind these two have been competing, in the eyes of Fujino, for the better part of 2 years, and now that it's over, Fujino can have a laugh at the victor. The manga strip showcased a competition where one side of people wanted for Kyomoto to stay inside, while the other wanted her to come out to see who could last as the greatest world shut-in. The dark aspect of it all being that Kyomoto is dead and doesn't really have a choice to come out. Considering the nature of Kyomoto, this manga strip is accurate to Kyomoto's shy nature and inability to go outside and communicate with others. The shyness that she cannot control limits her abilities to go out and keeps her detained in the room, mirroring the competition and showing that she really doesn't have a choice. As Fujino is running out of the home, Kyomoto pursues her outside and confesses that she is a huge fan of Fujino's and was the reason why she worked so hard on her own art. Kyomoto was a die-hard fan who could remember specific manga strips that Fujino drew off the top of her head. Kyomoto, seeing as this is her first chance, asks Fujino if she can get an autograph. Since they have no paper, they agree to sign the back of Kyomoto's jacket. Fujimoto repeatedly has used the concept of fans and celebrities, as this isn't necessarily the first time it has happened. In Fire Punch, Agni, the boy cursed with regeneration, is caught on fire with a flame that will never be put out. He gains a following and is infamously known throughout the world, which has been cursed in a worldwide eternal snowstorm. Togata, a character who loves movies, wishes to make Agni into a star by giving him lines of dialogue and how to act. This infatuation with Agni as a concept is what prompts Togata's desire to make a movie in this nightmarish world. Even if we look at Chainsaw Man, Makima is the Chainsaw Devil's biggest fan. I won't really explain more on that point as it would venture into spoiler territory, but you get the gist. Fujimoto loves to write about the sense of infatuation and admiration between two characters as fan and celebrity. The reason being, I don't really know. I've tried to mull over the reasons why, and the closest answer I reached was that being a fan of someone's, having admiration, is a pretty cool feeling to have. I've had countless situations where I've had mentees come up to me and explain that they wanted to learn how to speak publicly and they wanted me to teach them and show them how to master it. It is one of the universal feelings to have someone fawn over your talents. It frankly makes you feel really good about yourself and the skill that you possess. Dare I say, it might even make you feel giddy enough to dance in the rain. Kyomoto's act of having her back signed by Fujino shows a level of devotion that no ordinary or fake fan would have. Consider this. At the beginning of the story, Fujino's classmate who wanted her autograph when she made the Meteor manga strip was the same person who was comparing Fujino's art to Kyomoto's and made her artwork feel inferior. What type of supposed fan turns on someone they like so quickly? The act of signing Kyomoto's back showed devotion and made Fujino happy that someone in her circle of artists appreciated her work. Someone who she knew was better than her at artwork was giving her praise, as if the roles were reversed. Kyomoto goes as far as to call her a manga genius, after the continued fangirling. It is during this conversation that Kyomoto expresses her sadness that Fujino stopped creating manga strips at a specific point, showing the reader that Kyomoto truly was on top of Fujino's creations and used it as inspiration. Towards the end of their conversation, Kyomoto asks why Fujino has stopped making the weekly manga strips, to which Fujino, lying, states that she was actually working on a manga for a competition. As the rain cuts off their conversation, unfortunately, Fujino states that she will show Kyomoto the finished product. As Fujino walks back home, she breaks into a skip and goes full-on dance mode. Dancing is also another constant in Fujimoto's writing, but holds different meanings. In Chainsaw Man, poor Kobeni is forced to literally dance for her life, while being quite good at it, at the behest of Chainsaw Man. It is mostly played for comedic relief, to make fun of Kobeni, but in Look Back, the dance with the added rain takes on a different meaning. Rain, or rather water in literature, has been used to showcase the rebirth of individuals. In media, rain has also been used to hide the tears of characters who are crying. In this scene, Fujino is not crying but blushing as she starts dancing in the rain. I think it is because she finally feels so happy she can't stop but help breaking out into a dance. She started as a novice, threw away the role, and became a regular student, but now returns as a higher skilled artist, in a sense being rebirthed back into art. She has shed her skin of being a regular schoolgirl and now returns to the spontaneity of the artistic world. This is one of my favorite shots of the manga because of how much emotion, how much pride Fujino can barely contain in herself, as evident by the detail in her face. It's heartwarming. It's like going through your attic or basement and finding a drawing you made as a child of how you wanted to be a president or some knight in shining armor. Fujino is reborn in this scene and is put back on track to being an exceptional artist. In a sense, you can say that this is Fujino's victory dance. From this point on, we follow Fujino's daily life as she goes to middle school while working on the manga she wants to submit for the competition. Fujimoto makes use of the same style of presentation we had seen prior when Fujino was trying to improve her drawings. We are led to believe that Fujino has fallen into the same pitfalls of being antisocial, all for the sake of improving her craft. But we are taken in for a pleasant surprise when we see Kyomoto inside of Fujino's room when she comes back. Kyomoto does not continue going to school and works as the full-time background artist for Fujino's manga. The way this part of the manga is presented is heartwarming because it shows a genuine feeling of love between these two women. Fujino has become a sort of foster caretaker for Kyomoto, and in return, Kyomoto is the presence in Fujino's room that is always there to help her. Both of them worked in solitude and would in turn affect their social lives, but now that they can work together, they can make a truly beautiful art piece. They have become, dare I say, family, with how much they trust each other. There is nothing more fulfilling than having someone who genuinely shares the same interests as you. Fujino had a younger sister, but was more focused on the athletic side of hobbies, while her friends really just wanted to have fun and do normal teenage activities. But now, Fujino has found someone who can appreciate and even help her improve her craft. It is a beautiful blossoming of skills and friendship. The scene of strengthening is reinforced as we enter another montage where time passes by. The two work on the manga Metal Parade, and the room evolves along with them. From the desolate room that Fujino first started off with when she was learning to improve her art, to the now cluttered but full of inspirational mosh pit it is now. Upon approaching the publishing company Shueisha, the duo are praised for their hard work, considering they are both still just middle schoolers. We shift forward in time as we see a shot of a lonely 7-Eleven convenience store in the middle of a winter storm. Now, personally, I found this shot to be quite strange. I fully believe that every action or detail has a reason for being created by the author. I would go out on a limb and say that the reason 7-Eleven is in the winter storm is because of the uncertainty associated with their competition entry. The struggle that Fujino and Kyomoto face when working so hard on this project is showcased as they fight through the snow, all for them to arrive, see the results, and see that they won 1 million yen from the competition. In response, they opened up bank accounts, and at the order of Fujino, hit the town. They socialize, they eat, and even go to a movie theater that is a staple of Fujimoto's stories. The movie theater is also one of Fujimoto's obligatory details of his stories, and I was surprised to see it here as well. While it's not essential to look back, he still went ahead and drew the two characters in one for a reason. In Chainsaw Man, the theater transforms from a public setting into an intimate room. The premise of even going to a movie theater is that Denji is asked out on a date with Makima. They both go movie hopping, and as the date goes on, Denji realizes that Makima just doesn't like the majority of the movies, and they fail to make an effect on her. I could go on with the actual details, but I feel like I may want to cover this in a topic on another date. The point is, towards the end of the last movie, Makima and Denji are the only two left in the theater venue. It's an intimate venue where the two of them share a cry based on what they were watching. I think the point here that Fujimoto wanted to hit home with is that the theater is intimate. Even physically speaking, it's a compact room. How many times have you tried to sit next to two strangers in a packed viewing? In Fire Punch, I had always thought that the movie theater was a reference to the afterlife, or quite literally going to the afterlife, when towards the end of the manga, spoilers, certain characters meet in a movie theater and enjoy watching whatever's being shown. Based on characters like Togata, who I believe is just a self-insert for Fujimoto, we can believe that he loves the movie theater, or even then movies as a whole, or at the very least, he's a film buff. Let's take a look at the anime opening Kick Back, which is the official anime opening for the Chainsaw Man adaptation, which has multiple references to famous and cult classic movies. Even then, there's a shot in the opening which has all the Chainsaw Man characters watching a movie. There's this love for movies that Fujimoto wanted to showcase to the audience. If I'm correct, at the time of the CSM anime's release, there was a post on Twitter that Fujimoto made that referenced all of the movies in the anime opening. One look at these movies can lead anyone to believe that these movies have been appreciated throughout time. He knows how important movies, or rather fiction as a whole, is to affecting people. It may only be one panel in Fujimoto's one shot of Look Back, but I think there's always a reason for it. It's the intimate space that both Fujino and Kyomoto now share. Well, if it already wasn't shown when the two of them were in the small bedroom, now they share each other's company within the movie theater. I would really like to talk more about this subject, but I think I'm going to leave it for another day. I think at first for now, I'd like to listen to interviews or dig up information around Fujimoto's interests in film. There's definitely more to this topic, and I'm just scratching the surface of it. Prior to venturing out on their day-long binge, Fujino had planned to stimulate the economy with 100,000 yen, a line that made me chuckle at the similarity between her and power. It is quite obvious that Fujimoto really cares about the Japanese economy. As they return back home, barely spending their funds because of the sheer amount of it, Kyomoto confesses that because of her shyness, she grew to be scared of others and would become a shut-in where her outlet to the outside world would be drawing. After, we get another montage showcasing the different one-shots being released by Kyo Fujino, the pen name given to the dynamic duo. Titles such as The Sea Cities, The Cicada Humans, and Bagworms are among the names of their newly released manga. In particular, these titles had specific meaning to the relationship the two shared. One obvious hint is the Cicada Humans, where Kyomoto's reclusiveness is akin to the dormant cicada who has finally decided to come out of the earth and mold out of its old skin. Kyomoto is now a new person, as evident by her picture in France standing before the Eiffel Tower. Fujino never had an issue with connecting with new individuals, but Kyomoto was the shut-in who needed the guidance to interact with others. I find it especially heartwarming how in the pictures of Kyomoto during the montage, she's seen happy, embracing every inch of life with Fujino. She went from someone who could not even look at her publisher's eyes to someone who was proudly walking out in public to enjoy new experiences. After some time, they are offered a chance to have their manga serialized. While this news is overwhelmingly positive, Kyomoto shows obvious anxiety. Kyomoto confesses that she plans on attending art school, thereby meaning she will leave Fujino's side to improve her art. Fujino creates the most saddening scene where out of anger she begins to hurl insults at her friend because she's leaving. The two had spent so much time supporting each other through their art that now it feels like they're ripping off each other's limbs. Kyomoto had learned and grown so much thanks to Fujino that she wanted to be able to stand on her own 2 feet and provide help through improving her art. However, Fujino does not want to accept that she will be in a sense alone, and hurls more spiteful comments, such as having assistants help her out with the background instead of Kyomoto. Considering that Look Back is quite unlike the other two properties that were created by Fujimoto in terms of the sheer violence and absurdity, I find it amazing that such an intricate drama is created from these two heroines who are now seemingly beginning to rift apart. I think it speaks volumes to the quality of Fujimoto's talent at being able to create a compelling drama in such a short amount of time. After some time, we see Fujino in what appears to be her apartment or art office, where she has begun her new series, Shark Kick, which is funny considering the premise is a shark man wearing an almost Denji-styled outfit. I think that eventually we will speak on this specific topic later, but it allows me to form a tangent on the name of our two heroines, Kyomoto and Fujino. If it wasn't already obvious, the two names are simply Fujimoto's name split into, that is, Fuji and the Moto. Of course, the in-universe pen name is Kyo Fujino, but it sheds a new light on the meaning of the story, one that initially didn't stand out to me when I first began reading it. This will also be talked about later on in this essay when finally wrapping up the overall meaning of the manga and what it really stands for, not just for the audience, but also for Fujimoto. As we approach the climax of our story, tragedy strikes, where on January 10th, 2016, the art school that Fujino attends is attacked by an intruder wielding an axe-like weapon. As Fujino is notified of this attack while working, she calls Kyomoto's phone, to no response. Fujino's mom then calls her right after. I think the greatest sin we can commit is having guilt over an uncontrollable event. We tie ourselves to what happened and think that maybe If we were there, we could have changed the course of history, when in fact, sometimes, things just happen in the universe. I say this because we see a flashback where Fujino speaks to Kyomoto on improving her art, thus indirectly planting the seed of Kyomoto's desire to go to art school. There have been times in my life where I felt the same exact way, distressing over the guilt. Maybe I could have won the competition if I had tried this instead of that, when in reality, it never really mattered because I never had a chance to begin with. These feelings of self-punishment on behalf of a tragedy is dangerous because it almost feels like we're the ones with the smoking barrel. In reality, Fujino only wanted to help Kyomoto improve her art with some reassuring words. Of course, she does not see it this way and believes she might be partly to blame for, unfortunately, Kyomoto's death, and thus takes a break from her serialized manga, going on hiatus. Fujino visits Kyomoto's house for the sake of visiting her friend. Here, she continues to see the mountains of notebooks where, in one particular notebook, she spots the original manga strip that had accidentally slipped under Kyomoto's doorway when they first met. The feeling of guilt is weighed heavier on Fujino, and laments that it was because of that manga strip that coaxed Kyomoto out of her reclusive shell that she died. In anger, she rips it apart, where one specific panel from the manga strip saying, "Don't come out," slides underneath the doorway again, and to everyone's surprise, a younger, alternate Kyomoto on the day of Fujino's arrival to deliver her diploma. Now, Fujimoto's creations have always had a degree of the supernatural, but in this scene we get that on full display. Alternate Kyomoto, after seeing the "Don't Come Out" panel, decides to stay in her room when Fujino arrives. In doing so, she never meets the person she esteemed so highly and decides to still pursue her work in background art. Regardless of universe, it was a constant that Kyomoto would attend art school to improve her art style, leading us to believe that even if Fujino was upset that she might have caused Kyomoto's death, that it didn't really matter. She was going to be in the same exact spot, regardless of what happened. Now, how would you react if I told you that the universe of Look Back is actually the universe where Chainsaw Man was created? Kyomoto, in one of the panels while she's at art school, is the one making the background for the Denji "Don't Open the Door" scene. This pushes me harder to believe that perhaps Fujimoto wrote this as a way to escape writer's block when possibly working on Chainsaw Man. More on this later. The event of the serial killer plays out on the fateful day and enters the school. When about to kill Kyomoto, the attacker is beaten up by Fujino, experienced karate master. As Fujino is escorted out of the art school after slipping, she reconnects with Kyomoto, having the same conversation that they had when they first met as children in our reality, but with a bit of less humility. They both share a high note, with the possibility of working together on a future manga. As Kyomoto returns back home, she rereads the manga strip First Kiss, the short 4-panel story where Fujino made lovers reunite with a cruel twist of fate, the meteor. The emphasis is placed on in another world. As Kyomoto is drawing on a new manga strip, the wind pushes her manga strip underneath the door, where it lands on the other side where our current Fujino is. The manga strip in particular is called Look Back, haha title, detailing the events of Kyomoto's rescue in the alternate universe. As Fujino enters, she sees that Kyomoto was still her biggest fan by having all of the Shark Kicks volumes, and more of her artwork all over the floor. Fujino literally decides to look back and sees the same jacket Kyomoto wore when they first met, the one that had been signed. We receive one last flashback, which I think is the fully intended theme that Fujimoto wanted us to understand of how authors feel when people read their content. In this flashback, we see Fujino showing Kyomoto the draft for Metal Parade, and when asked, why does she draw, she just thinks about it, and what we're seeing is panels of no dialogue, but just both of them reading and working together on manga. I think the answer here is that Fujino likes to draw because she enjoys seeing other people enjoy her work. Fujino regains her composure and heads back to work, where in her large window the only piece of art sticking to it this time is the look back manga strip. The manga ends there, on a melancholic note. In a cruel twist of fate, I myself had just finished reading Goodnight Pun Pun a few days ago. A depressing story where some solace is found in the ending had hit me twice over. The ending of Look Back is not supposed to make you happy, but rather leave you in a state of acceptance. Yes, we agree that life goes on because Fujino cannot simply decide to quit as a creator. She had pushed herself to go beyond her talents as an artist. At the end of this story, it's undoubtedly true that she has become a wonderful artist who has many accolades to prove it. One of her passions in life was working with Kyomoto, but more importantly, one of her main drivers was by providing entertainment for others. We, and she, understand that the world did not revolve around her friend, and so Fujino knows that the only way to honor her death was by continuing to work on manga that her friend had cherished so much when they were kids. I think this also in some ways relates to Fujimoto as a writer. The various themes of movie theaters, intimate moments, to some degree to worship or look up to is relevant to a discussion of his writing. Fujimoto loves the aspect of giving to the audience. Chainsaw Man is indicative of that, where several points of the story are filled with tragedy and hope. Even if we share highs and lows, the act of consuming the media together is something he enjoys to see. Just like any other artist or writer who likes to have their content looked upon and read. Funnily enough, chefs in that regard love it when individuals eat their food with pleasure. This is the same principle. Fujimoto is cooking a good meal for us to consume. Look Back's theme of entertaining others is noble and innocent. As shown in the ending, regardless of the many painful hardships an author will face in their lives, they will continue to keep writing for the sake of others. This last section of the video will be devoted to Fujimoto as a whole. Earlier I stated that the names of the characters were merely placeholders for Fujimoto himself. Towards the beginning of the story, we see Fujino struggling to overcome the insurmountable talents of Kyomoto to the point she eventually flat out gives up. To a degree, we can metaphorically use this as his writer's block, an event that every author eventually runs into sooner or later. It is throughout the story that we see the two heroines improve their art and continue to make successful one-shots. I think the montage that shows every new one-shot created is telling of human experiences. Usually, to break out of a writer's block, one can focus on breaking the monotony of their routine and try new experiences. This is what happens as the two heroines visit the sea, even to Paris, France, due to their successes. While true, to some degree it is them enjoying their successes, but I think it lends a double meaning to how improvement can come not just from internal training, but from your environment. I think that the concept of writer's block is put on full display towards the end of the story, where Fujino goes on hiatus after a traumatic loss. It's possible that Look Back was written while Fujimoto was writing Chainsaw Man due to the imagery of Denji's closed-door memory as a painting, and the outfit that the Shark Kick main character wears as a means to get past his writer's block. This happens to everyone. To this day, I applaud the creator of One Piece, who can make chapters week after week. It's a stressful role to have. But I think that Fujimoto puts the author's feelings in a different light when Fujino reminisces about the times that she and Kyomoto would read their manga and discuss it. It's telling that the last shot of the manga is Fujino continuing her manga and working while having the manga strip in front of her. Do it for her can also mean doing it for the audience. We have seen several examples of content creators pushing themselves to provide visual meals for their audience. One of the reasons they are so passionate about creating is because they know that if someone is having a sad day, their content will make them happy. While I do not think this is the same exact mentality, I do think Fujimoto loves to give his audience more and make us happy, as evident from the Chainsaw Man Part 2 chapters, which take a different tone from Part 1. The supernatural plays a unique role in this manga because it leads us to believe different theories on what's actually happening. The first being the paper slip that traveled through dimensions back and forth to the alternate Kyomoto and our universe, Fujino. How in the world would Kyomoto know that she would have been killed in the art school and preemptively drew an alternate universe of her being saved? This scene isn't meant to make any sense, but instead a reference to the first kiss drawing that Fujino had made. If they were both to be reincarnated, then perhaps they could find a way to not repeat the same mistake, but in exchange lose the bonding experience that they had. There's evidence for this when Kyomoto recognizes Fujino after being saved by the axe attacker. That same childlike wonder was gone from her eyes when they first met as children in our universe. One of my crackpot theories is that we are on the receiving end of an untrustworthy narrator. Remember earlier how I said that we as humans feel guilt over events that we had no control over? Perhaps, maybe, Fujino simply imagined that a manga strip had slipped underneath the door. She herself could have drawn the manga strip, look back, as a way to cope with the possibility that maybe she could have saved Kyomoto in another life. Overall, Look Back is a worthwhile experience. I find myself recommending it to others whenever I have the chance, especially to those individuals who are currently facing a case of writer's block. I myself could not work on any other video until now. I found myself moved by the experience and started to immediately work on a script. It's a tragic story, yet incredibly hopeful. It looks back to a time when we didn't have to worry so much and enjoy the company of others without societal pressures. Look back, a phrase which holds significant meaning in the context of this story, is a phrase that means to take a retrospective look at what you've accomplished. There's so much beauty drawn in every panel. It shocks me to say that such a short manga was capable of telling so much. I think it's a good manga to read, to remember what makes our hobbies so unique and what made us first fall in love with them. The similarities between this manga and the real world is strikingly similar. The melancholy that surrounds us and the precious moments we share with our friends. Hopefully you enjoyed today's discussion of Look Back, and maybe I shed a new light on something for those who have already read it, and maybe interested those who haven't read it to go take a look, even though I kind of just explained the entire story. I'm going to try to upload more frequently as I have a plethora of topics to cover and have a bit more time under my sleeve. With that said, if you'd like to leave a like and maybe subscribe to maybe see future ongoing projects that I have planned. I hope you've enjoyed your time here, and I hope you have a great day or night.